What if I told you that 17.3 million American adults have depression? 17.3 million adults. What does that make you think about? I'll tell you what, when I see statistics like that, it always blows my mind because we're all walking around here like nothing's happening. Like, oh, yeah, I got my stuff together. Yeah, it's stressful. I sometimes think that we talk about stress like it's some sort of commodity that we have. Like, oh, you think you're stressed? Well, I have way more stacked up at my house over here. It's ridiculous. It's become so commonplace that we just don't even really notice it's there. But the World Health Organization tells us that depression is literally the leading cause of disability in this world. Depression, not some sort of physical illness, depression. If you want to learn a little bit more today about how I think we should be addressing this in America for yourselves and certainly as midlife women, keep listening. Welcome back. Well, wow, we had a great run at talking about midlife mastery. And just so you know, if you haven't already, please go to the notes and click on the link because I'm still offering a free one-on-one session where we're going to go through an assessment, kind of look at where you're at with things, and I can give you an individualized plan and an individualized assessment that really talks to where are your strengths, where are your vulnerabilities, and what are some of the recommendations that I would give you instead of just the general recommendations I give here on the podcast. So what did you think of those statistics though? Woof, grim, right? 17.3 million adults in America have depression. I kind of want to crawl into my covers, I'm not going to lie. But even though those are harrowing statistics, they're accurate, right? And honestly, they're gonna be under accurate if I'm being honest, because the way that we collect data like this is through report, and sometimes through, gleaning information that's more public about diagnoses of people getting healthcare, that kind of thing. But wherever we're getting this information, somebody had to say, yeah, I feel depressed, or yeah, I have these symptoms. And then a healthcare provider said, that's depression, check. So if you're not reporting it, which I'm telling you, there are more people out there than you know that are walking around dealing with a ton of depression and not talking about it. Not to mention that a lot of us will call it things like stress or anxiety. Now, anxiety disorders are very specific. And when you're talking to a clinician like myself, we have our idea of what anxiety is. But pop culture kind of throws around depression, anxiety, and stress all like, there's a lot of overlap in the definitions or assumptions that they're using when you use that language. And so when you talk to somebody that's never seen a therapist, never talked to their doctor about feeling sad or down or upset or irritable and taken some medication for it, doesn't have any idea of what these checklists of symptoms are that we're looking at, you might say things like, I'm just feeling down, or I'm just feeling depressed, or I'm feeling stressed, when the stress is actually depression, thinking or saying that you have anxiety, and the anxiety is actually depression. Depression is quite common. And certainly it's also quite common to have both depression and anxiety, or a depression that looks more anxious, or an anxiety that creates depression kind of on the side. So these are things as a clinician, I just know to be true, but you don't know that, right? You're just walking around there. And so let's just, first of all, say to ourselves, like, this is a really significant issue. If of those major depressive episodes, 63.8% of adults and 70% of adolescents have severe impairment in the United States, that's a big deal, right? Of those 17.3 million adults, almost 64% have severe impairment, which means things like they're missing work and their relationships are being impacted, and they're, like kids or caretaking, or they're, if you're in midlife, if you're caretaking older adults and younger adults, like all that's being impacted. Workplaces being impacted because you can't get there, which means economy is being impacted. This is an epidemic, not to mention that one of the most harrowing statistics always for me is that adult women are twice as likely as men to have depression, right? That's significant. And in midlife, there is a bigger surge. There's kind of this midlife muck. So when I'm talking to you about this, and my target audience is you, it's a midlife woman who is just struggling to get up in the morning and put cereal in her face. I'm trying to help you understand and normalize that some of your experience is an experience that a lot of us are having. Now, the bigger systemic question is, why are we all having this experience, and what in the what? We need to figure out a way to get ourselves out of this predicament, right? For sure. I'm with you 100%. So this brings to mind the idea of taking care of ourselves, right? Like, what is it we need to do to take care of ourselves, or to prevent depression, or to better manage depression if we already have it, or stress or anxiety, or whatever word you want to slip in there and tell me that your problem feelings are called. I don't care. You can call them Fred, you can call them Wilma, you can call them whatever you want, but they are there. I know they are. And so what are these things that we should be doing to care for ourselves, or to care for that, or take care of that, right? It's a big question, because there are a lot of ways to go at it. Today in this month, what I'm going to be focusing in on is this idea of self-care. Now, self-care gets slung around a lot too. And so I need to define for you what I mean by self-care. But let's just look for a minute at what a lot of people think of self-care. I almost always, when I ask a question about self-care, when I'm interviewing someone, or, my new assessment where you get your one-to-one coaching, I actually ask several questions along this line. But what I notice when people kind of report things to me is that we've gotten the idea that self-care is physical body care. Like, the thing that I hear most are, well, I eat a good diet, and I try to exercise 3 to 4 times a week, thinking that that defines what self-care, like if I do those things, then I'm doing self-care. And so we'll dig a little bit more into, what do you think it is, and what do you think it isn't? Like, if you have self-care in your life, if you're doing it like you're killing it, you're doing it better than anybody else, what does that look like? And if you're struggling with it, what does that look like, do you think? Because sometimes that helps me get a better idea of what your picture of self-care is. And in general, as we kind of distill that down, most people have an idea of self-care being some version of the things I do for myself to get myself back to normal, the things that catch me back up, or the things that I do to escape from my stress, essentially, because it's just gotten too overwhelming, so that I can reset. So some people would say, like, a self-care thing would be, I might take a weekend and go out of town, or visit somebody I care about, and try to reset before the work week on Monday. Like, if I have a stressful week, that might be one of the ways I go about it. So you can see this kind of an idea of self-care is still assuming that you're at optimum functioning level, and that all you need is a refresh, right? That isn't actually how this works. It's not how the human is designed, right? Like, part of what you're seeing when you see depression, some of the most common symptoms of depression people don't know. Things like you're irritable. People think it's really just being down and sad all the time, but people with depression have a high amount of irritability, which really means they don't tolerate anything going out of whack very well. Sound familiar? Right. So if you have very little tolerance past, like, if everything just stays controlled and as I need it to be, I'll be okay. But if anything goes awry, I won't be okay. you are well below where you should be for baseline, right? And so if what's happening is that week stretches you way, way too thin and you need to recharge on the weekends, I still think that when you get back on Monday, you are not where you need to be. So self-care in lots of ways is what are we doing that fills us up and gives us enough bandwidth, enough space between losing it and being able to handle stress. That's what we're gearing at. What we need is for you to function in such a way that if things come your way, you can handle them all the time. Not, I need to get some self care to make up for the fact that I can't handle them, or I need to do some self care to get myself back because I hit that line and I've lost it. This is not efficient self care. Self care really is about doing the kinds of things for ourselves in all the different realms, not just physical, emotional, mental, mind. All of the great, not just physical, but emotional, your mind, challenging yourself cognitively, your work life having self-care, your private life having self-care, your social life having self-care built into it. I know you're already scratching your head. Hopefully you're not driving and you still have two hands on the wheel. But if you are driving, keep two hands on the wheel. You're hearing this and you're thinking to me, what does she mean? Like, yes, but in all realms of our life, there needs to be an element of self-care built in. And the purpose of it is to keep us in our lives. What will happen naturally when we have been in toxic stress or chronic stress for too long is that we want to escape. We want to avoid things. We don't want to feel that way. We want to have the glass of wine on Friday, and we might start drinking them on Wednesday, right? This is the kind of stuff that starts to creep in. We watched Netflix all weekend and didn't get anything done for the house, right? It's the kinds of things that we start to do to escape our lives or escape the stress, at least, is what we're considering it to be. We're avoiding that stress, we're escaping that stress. I want you to think of self-care as the thing that bolsters us up so that we can take on any kind of stress, well, nearly any kind of stress, so that even if you are having stressful things happen, it isn't like they throw you over the edge. It isn't like standing in line and somebody in front of you taking their sweet time starts to make you just surge and boil, right? We don't want that for you. What we want is for you to not just be good, but to be so good, so well put together in all facets of your life that, hey, if the boss gives you an extra thing to do, yeah, it sucks. Yeah, it's going to eat into some of your time, but you've got it in you to do it. Your partner at home slacking on, taking care of some of the household duties, and you kind of are walking into the bathroom and it's not clean or the dishes aren't done. It won't throw you over the edge, right? This is the point of what self-care does. And this is the essentiality of self-care. It is not a luxury, but it definitely gets marketed that way, right? So we live in this capitalistic society where, God bless us, we're all trying to make a buck. And I don't want anybody to hear that I don't want them to do that. But the marketing towards self-care as a luxury it has an implied message that's really dangerous for us, especially when you talk about 17.3 million adults having depression in America. Self-care, that is, take the weekend and go on a trip, go indulge yourself and have a dinner here, buy this, item, and it will be relaxing for you at home. And that's your self-care. Or, even the marketing towards your physical body care. And, you need this and you need this kind of gym membership. And maybe you should have this and, yoga and this and this and this to go with that. I love these items. It's not like any one of those things isn't valuable, but I can't name them as effective self-care for everybody. They might be part of someone's self-care regimen, yes, and work for them, but self-care is an individual thing. Everybody's self-care is individualized. And here's something even more mind-bendy. It's not just that it's individualized, but as we age and develop and change, it has to change with us. Because what was self-care for me when I was 20 and when I was 30 and when I was 40 is not where I'm at today. It's just not. I need different kinds of things, and my energy levels and stamina for things are different. Some of which is better. Like my stamina for some things are much better than they were when I was younger. But my focus, when I was 20 was on lots of different things. And so I didn't have stamina for any one. I just wanted to do all the things all the time. And now I want to find the things I love and zone in on them. So let's just talk about self-care as this thing that we do for ourselves, this attention to ourselves to be feeding the vessel that is going to go out into the world and do all of what we're desiring to do, all of the things that are in alignment with our purpose, with who we are as people. So it's all that we do to support that. It isn't stuff that we just add on here and there as a luxury or an addition or let's go take a break for a while and come back at it. It's not that. It's stuff that has to be here day in and day out. It's a necessity. I have a blog. I'll try to put in the notes a link to this blog, but I have a blog that talks about rewarding yourself daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly. And it's based in this kind of self-care premise. But what I'm getting at is that there are different levels to our self-care too. There are things that we have to do on the daily. If we're not doing them on the daily, we don't function, right? But there are some versions of our self-care that don't have to happen that frequently. And there are some parts of our self-care regimen that don't have anything to do with things that we're doing necessarily or taking time with. It's more about the boundaries that we're setting with our time, or the boundaries we're setting with other people and their accessibility to us, or how many things we decide to take on. Self-care comes in all sizes and packages. The rest of the month, I'm going to get into more of those details. But today, I really just wanted to focus in on this concept that self-care is something that you're doing to keep yourself at your optimum level. And it isn't something that is an addition or an add-on or a luxury, but rather something that I want you to start to really mess around with and start thinking from the perspective of what are the things that I absolutely need, that are non-negotiables, that keep me at my optimum level, right? So, hey, some of us might have to have a real hard talk with ourselves and really look at what is my optimum level? Because if I am just getting by during the week and refreshing on my weekends, this is not a sustainable model, right? This is not a great business model for sure, but it's not a sustainable model of living at all. So I would say you need to have a hard conversation with yourself about what is realistic. What would optimum look like? So you can start with asking yourself questions and doing some reflection and even, journaling. Remember, I am a therapist, so I'm going to throw these things out to you every once in a while. But you can start with some reflection around, who are the people in my life that I think are operating that optimum level? And what is it that it looks like that they are and that they do when they're at that optimum level. So that's one way to come at it. Another way to come at it is just to say, ideally, how would I know that I had arrived at optimum level for myself? What would I feel like? What would I look like? What would I be spending my time doing? Who would I be spending that time with? Would things look any different, right? So if you're reflecting and you answer those questions I just asked, what you may find is that some of the things that you're doing on the regular now are things that at an optimum level, you would probably set a boundary and say, that's not for me. So that extra job that you're volunteering, at the PTA, you're not going to do, or that extra thing that you're volunteering at some other, community organization, you're not going to be doing. But you definitely are still going to be saying yes to all of the invitations that your friends have for fun things to do on the weekends, because that lights you up. So that's what I would think of. It's kind of Marie Kondoing, having a hard conversation with yourself and Marie Kondoing your life, where you're looking at, like, does this spark joy? Does this bring me what I need and light me up? Or is this just a thing that's like neutral? Or even worse, is this just a thing that I'm just tolerating or not even really tolerating well? So after you've done an assessment like that, then you can look at your life and kind of categorically start to see where are the areas that I'm most in deficit in my self-care. Could be spiritual, could be mental, maybe I need to challenge my brain a little bit. I haven't done anything new in my job for years and years and years. I just punch in and punch out and do the thing. And I haven't expanded any of my awareness. I've kind of dropped out of all that. Well, let's figure out a way to do that. Let's figure out a way that works for you, that lights you up, that builds your learning capacity, that makes you use that brain of yours. It's a really good protective factor against any kind of dementia or Alzheimer's later in life, is that we're, stretching our brain to continue to have to learn new things. Some crazy neurologists will talk about, like, just switch which hand you brush your teeth with. It doesn't have to be a big deal, right? So, like, switch the hand that you brush your teeth with. You're having to learn a new set of motions, right? Your body memory is that this dominant hand does it. So if you start brushing your teeth with a separate hand, you're going to notice it right away. It's going to feel uncomfortable, weird, just not right. But it's creating new neurology in your brain, because your brain is going to have to compensate and say, well, how do we do this? And how do we make that more rhythmic and automatic? Because we had been doing it this other way for a long time. So, expanding our brains doesn't mean you necessarily need to all of a sudden become somebody who looks at the Harvard Business Review. I just mean you need to challenge yourself in some way to keep building and keep learning and keep those learning skills up. So you do this kind of audit, you're looking at what sparks joy, you're Marie Kondoing your life, and you'll come down to just kind of two categories of self-care things. So the first category is, we have only a certain amount of energy, right? We're a finite resource, which is why we need to do this self-care, right? If we're going to stay optimum in our optimum energy level, then we're going to have things that shore that up, that, create some flexible or permeable walls. Because I don't want you to feel like you have to, like, hold up in the tower or something, but you want to wrap around your life just some boundaries around what you're going to let yourself do and not do, who are you going to let in and not in, how much access are they going to have or not have. But we're shoring up to make sure that we preserve the energy that is inside us, right? Now, life takes energy. Turns out we can't just shore it all up and we'll be okay. Like, that's not how this works either. So the other category are, what are those things that replenish us? What are the things that fill us back up when we have depleted ourselves? So it's a constant dance between those two, because we have to be very discerning about, I want to burn my energy in the work that I do. It brings me tons of joy. I want to be there, like, I want to burn energy in taking care of my family. That means a lot to me. I want to burn energy in getting up at 5:30 in the morning, and God bless her soul, this is what my neighbor does, and go and exercise every single morning. That's not for everybody, right? But we're doing these discerning things where we decide what we want. Right? Where do we want to expend that energy? But we also then have to decide, what are we doing that replenishes, right? So there'll be a certain amount that just keeps you in that optimum level if nothing happens in our life, if everything just keeps copacetic and nothing is happening in our life. All right. So that's your baseline amount of self-care things. There's things that are boundaried and keeping what energy in that, not letting it leak in ways that you're not seeing it. One of my favorite ways to pick out if you have like a leak, do you say yes to things and have difficulty saying no? Because if you say yes to almost everything and don't like saying no, feel uncomfortable saying no, try to make it work, then more than likely you're leaking a lot of your energy, because that's an easy shore up. That's an easy way to just say, no, I can't take anything else on. It's not part of this optimum level for me. So I'm not going to let that leak out. So we have this optimum level. And if everything keeps going as it goes, we're okay. So now we need another set of things that both boundary up, shore things up, and refill us, that are meant for when we get a certain amount of stress. Okay. So think about your life. When you're doing that audit, you can also look at, is there any pattern to this? Some of us have, like, as a mental health professional, I can tell you there are definitely waves during the year where you'll see more or less people. So say you're a child therapist, for instance, or a school counselor. When do you think you start to see the most kids? Bum, 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 right at, like about a month after they've gotten into school and the teachers have gotten a hold of them and they're seeing how this is going or not going. Kids get referred to their, outside therapists, or kids get referred to those school counselors. And so I would say school counselors would tell you about October, woof, a lot happening. Or if you start in August, about September, woo, lots happening. So it's about a month in. And there are waves like that in different careers. So there may be ways to be that this is predictive, right? And you can be really strategic about, I'm going to need extra this during this time. So if you're to go on that, if you're this person that needs a little extra time because you're a school counselor and it's October, you will probably not schedule, a big family gathering during that month that would take a lot of extra effort on your part to be able to prepare for, right? Or you might not want to remodel your kitchen during this time. That might not be the best idea because you'd want everything at home to stay in its routine the way you need it to stay. Okay. So you're trying to come to some understanding of, like, what would be these extra things that I could do that would shore things up or fill me back up? So you may have other things on your self-care list that aren't routinely there, but are able to be accessed as you need them. Right. And this is where, when I talk, about those different levels of the daily, the weekly, the monthly, the yearly, these monthly things are usually some of the things that I have people think about for this category, because I want you still to be doing them routinely, because I need them to be the kinds of things that still fill you back up, right? Or still create a boundary for you. If you don't use it, you're going to lose it. If you're not practicing it, it may not have the same effect on you. So there are some things that I talk about, like you're doing on the monthly regularly. So hey, I don't know, maybe you give yourself a little bit of a savings account. You'll build a little bit back up in self-care if nothing is happening in your life and everything is staying stable. But for those of us where there's stress, this is an opportunity for us to do extra replenishment, right? So scheduling, say, a 3-day weekend every month of the year, that 12 of your PTO days are dedicated to creating a 3-day weekend for yourself every month of the year. That might be an opportunity for you. Not for all of us, but it could be one for you. Or I'm always going to work a half day on Fridays and I work 9-hour days on the other days. And that half day on Fridays is my weekly that really invests. But every once in a while, for the month, I'll take that 4 hours off, and I'll also give myself a 3-day weekend. These are the kinds of things that we're building in to be there for us, but they also will tell us where we can amp something up on either side, on needing to create boundaries or on replenishing things. And you really need, again, the dance. You need to balance between those, because it isn't just enough to say, I have this hard project at work and I'm going at it 24/7 right now, and I'm going to keep doing all that I do all the time. That's not going to work for you, right? So in those, situations, yeah, you're going to have to say no to more things, even things you'd want to do. You might have to say, no, I can't take the kids there. No, I can't, do this family engagement, all because I need the extra time right now for myself to have some restoration in between. You also, though, are burning a lot of midnight oil. So you need other things that are replenishing you. And those things can be pretty simple. They might be as simple as, say, just getting more rest and making sure that you're absolutely rigid about making sure to get your 8 hours. So we have our baseline. Here's me doing optimum. We have some extra things that if any stressors hit us, we know what they are. And then above that, there are the things that we would call on if we were in dire need. Okay. And these have to get practiced too. Because let me tell you, probably the signature thing that women that I work with say to me all the time is I don't ask for help when I need it. I am there always to offer that help for someone else, but I do not ask for that help. And part of why they don't is they've never practiced it. They were never taught it. They didn't see examples of that. Because if you're in this human doer syndrome that we all are in, human givers, we've been acculturated to be doing that and serving all the time. We weren't given opportunities to see what it looked like to ask for the help and to receive the help. And sometimes it even feels yucky to receive the help because we've got all sorts of social conditioning that tells us we shouldn't be doing that. Well, of course you should, because there are just times where your optimum amount of self-care isn't working, a little bit of extra isn't working, and you need to call in some reinforcements. So you also have to be thinking about it that way. And one of the ways that I'll talk about it with my coaching clients is if you think of yourself like at the center of a set of concentric circles, okay? So you're the circle in the middle and you're making these, it looks like a target, circles that go around you. What you're trying to create here is that, when you need help, there are things that can come to your aid from your self-care. And that's just outside of you, right? It's just the circle right outside of you. But when you can't make that work, that even that piece of your life is going to have to reach out and get some help to get you to be most reinforced. So, if part of your self-care regimen is to be social, which a lot of us that have a social self-care need, you're probably seeing your friends on the regular, but if you're not talking to them about the problems that you're having, then you're not going to get that extra bit. And if the problems you're having erupt into a big deal, then you need to lean on those people that you're seeing all the time. But you also have to believe that those people are leaning on the people they need in order to support you with that. And that is a rank ordering of self-care socially. Like I depend on the kind of people that I know are the kind of people that depend on their people if ever I ask. It's not over ask, but if ever I have to ask a great deal of them. And I trust that they will they're boundaried and they're going to tell me, nope, can't do that. I'm so sorry, Natalie. So that's the kind of thing I want you to be thinking about throughout this month as you listen to all the different ideas that I'm going to be giving us on what it is that self-care really is and what it is that it isn't, and giving you new ideas for ways to expand so that you can create a better optimum level of regular self-care that you're giving to yourself all the time. And then anytime there's some added stress in your life, you've got a group of things that you're doing when you need that. And then anytime that the really bad stuff happens, which does happen occasionally, that you have a plan for that as well to add on with your self-care. And it's always going to be a combination of boundarying or, firming up the boundaries of what keeps your energy in and things that you're doing that replenish you, because you can't have one without the other. They just don't work without being in unison with one another. Okay. Well, I had a great time talking about this. I really am excited to share some of the things that I share with my coaching group. So what you're going to get in the next few weeks are some of the very things that I share with my coaching groups on self-care. Yeah, so I'm excited to be able to share with you. These are things that I do for coaching. I mean, this is what you would get with me. And in particular, we will talk about boundaries. So that will be one of the subject matters that we get into. But we're also going to talk about things that you maybe haven't thought of, like energetic healing modalities that might be also useful in bolstering up your energy or in creating boundaries with your energy. So it's going to be fun to kind of sift through some of this stuff. And I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments, or any of you that follow on social media, add to this, because I will be asking questions throughout this month on my social media feeds about self-care and what people are doing, what they're, what works the best for them. And when they're in that hot spot, how do they get out of it? Because I'm curious to hear, and I'm always adding to this part of the curriculum that I do for my courses online or my coaching packages. And as we start to share with one another, we'll be able to make better optimum, better extra, and better, when we need to really call in the reserves, we'll make better plans for our self-care plan, better regimens for our self-care regimens. And we'll be better about looking at that balance between boundarying it up and making sure that we have things that refill us. And we are just doing this to help everybody here design the life that they want to be living in and learn to love their story.